Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News with me, Katura King. My first guest is a versatile visual artist who utilizes painting, photography, filmmaking, and sculpture to express his art. Isaac Emokpae's approach to art is based broadly on the principle of duality, which creates simplicity and power in every piece of art. Having studied visual arts at the University of Lagos, where he honed his skills as a painter, Isaac went on to produce works primarily in Expressionism and Surrealist art movements. This United Nations award-winning artist is not only acclaimed locally, but internationally, with solo and group exhibitions around the world. He remains very selective about his works and divides his time between painting and photography projects. Welcome to the morning show, Isaac.
Thank you, Ms. King. How are you?
So nice to have you here with us. I'm very well, resplendent in orange, as you can see.
Lovely.
I thought I'd hype it up, give a bit of vibrancy to today's show,
Right.
since I'm talking to an artist.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellent.
Now, you are one of Nigeria's greatest art exports. What has the journey been like for you?
It's been good. For me, it was something that started really early because my dad was an artist.
Right.
So I actually had the slight advantage and also disadvantage of seeing it as normal. It was life. It wasn't a job.
Right.
That was normal. I thought, okay, everything that I grew up with was the way people were. I then, of course, had to learn over time that, yes, not everybody has that same aesthetic understanding or that same approach to culture and diversity as I grew up with.
Yes. So you explore the principles of duality quite often. What does that even mean?
Well, duality is about balance. It essentially means that there's always something that counterbalances the one thing that you're looking at or that you're experiencing. So say, for example, if you crack a joke, someone finds it funny, who tail end of that joke,
right,
who doesn't find it funny.
Right.
So for everything, there has to be an opposing force. Physics would tell you for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's what duality is.
And can you explain that in terms of the paintings that we're seeing on screen now? How does duality come into that concept?
Very good. Now, what I tend to do is I always try and create an element of balance.
Right.
So in some images, you will have a night versus day. In some images, you will have issues discussed across sadness and joy.
I see.
And one of the things I like to do is sometimes in works, you have writing right in the work. So I always hope to engage the audience or the viewer by walking right up and reading what the driving idea behind the piece was.
Yes, of course. Now, is the female body included in this concept of duality? Because you seem to have a thing for the female anatomy. What is going on there? Tell me about this. Why is this so interesting to you?
It goes all the way back. I think and I believe that, look, God gave Adam a job. Then God said to Adam, you know what, you can't have a job without perks.
Oh, okay. Remember, this is a breakfast show.
So you can't have a job without perks. And then he says, okay, you know what, I'm going to give you something that you will value personally. Right. And then he makes the upgrade.
Right.
Good. So essentially, what do you give to a person who is logical and is a force for tending and creation, et cetera, et cetera? You give that person something more beautiful than something they've ever seen in the whole of Eden. As a woman.
I see. Interesting concept. So I'm not entirely sure where I sit with that one, but it's very interesting nonetheless. Now, talk me through the painting process for you. What is that like?
Now, one of the things I try to do is to stay true to an original idea. When you overthink the process, I think you lose the honesty in it. So I start by writing. I take a sheet of paper, take a pencil, and start writing exactly what I feel at the point in time.
Right.
Then I allow, and that's the whole point of why I call myself an expressionist or an abstract expressionist. I allow the paint, the form that I work on, to radiate the idea that I initially had. So in the end, the beauty of it is you capture people at a very visceral base level. You know, they see it and they understand that they like it.
Right.
Then over time, they start to decide why they like it.
You really do speak like an artist. You are a true creative. I mean, I'm almost lost. I'm sort of captivated by the spiel you're giving me. I love it.
Thank you. I have to keep up with the dress.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Now, in terms of the painting process and becoming a visual artist, when did you realize that you could actually make a living at painting?
Well, ironically, it was while I was in medical school.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting turn of events.
Yes. I had always, growing up in the house of an artist or the home of an artist, you also are guilty of treating art like it's just one of those things you do. You know, it dulls it for you. You aspire to something else.
Yes.
Then over time, I started to realize a lot of the things I had been trying to get through were basically just aspects of my creative side. And you see that a lot, with a lot of our creatives today, you tend to have had them go through a full course doing something totally different.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, boom, you're singing. Oh, you're writing. Oh, you're this. Like, because that happens. So, you're on this tangent, but you're not on the right path and everything. So life circumstances, things I can't really get into here, but they essentially helped me realize that, you know what, F it, I'm gonna do it. So I did it. And it's ironic that having come through the household I did, I should even have worried myself about having a life or living in art. There was really no question, it can be done.
Yeah. So coming from a house filled with artists, what event or person would you say shaped you the most?
Well, I start with my father, God bless him, and then of course my brother, Mr. Emokpae. He also, it's very hard to describe the influence, because when an influence is calm but not forceful, it's very there. It's vital, but it's easy to overlook it.
Right. It's constant.
Exactly, it's constant. My mum was also a very big driving force, because she, as all mothers do, she expected so much more of me, and she never seemed to doubt me. So that was always very important. And then, my sisters, as sisters are, they just assume like, yeah, you can do this. Okay, so do this. And when you have that kind of support system, it really does give you the confidence that you need. Because I wouldn't put it that way, but sometimes it's a fake it till you make it thing.
Now, moving away from your paintings briefly, ever so briefly, to your photography, your body of photography work, you've done some interesting shoots. Let us start with the 1950s wedding shoots.
Yes.
So let's take a look at it while you tell me about the inspirations behind it.
Well, it was really fun. Ironically, it's a commission that came from my sister.
Right.
And, we had sat down, lined it up and everything. And, one of the things I like about collaborating with my siblings is we tend to have a get up and go.
Right.
Like, okay, there's never an inhibition. We immediately we're all together. It's almost like that whole Voltron effect. Like, we're all stronger as one.
Come together.
Yes. So we did, and we chose a whole bunch of locations, and we basically did it because. The funny thing is, like I was saying on the way here, there's so much of Lagos and so much of Nigeria as a whole that people just breeze through, and they never stop to just take it in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
so we overlook it because, like you said, it's always there.
It's always there. It's constant.
Yeah.
And that is technically the job of an artist. You have to elevate the ordinary so that people realize that, look, the value of what you have is okay. You just have to put more effort into it.
Yes.
And it'll be what you want it to be. Don't bother about, oh, I just absolutely have to just vanish to France and tear up my Nigerian passport and never come back. You know, just change my name and become Francois or something. And you know, but you know, and that's not necessary. You have so much here.
Yes.
And you can be romantic about your own country. You can be romantic about the views in your place. And until you do that, people will never truly ascribe beauty to Nigeria.
Absolutely. So we should be able to find beauty in the Transformers and not just the Eiffel Tower.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
Now we have some of your other photo shoots. We've got the fashion accessories one and then the stage play photos. So tell me about both of those.
Well, once again, there's a reason why muses are women. Muses are women because women are just interesting to look at. It's never difficult to not be inspired by a woman. So you have accessories, you know, and there's always something really beautiful about a woman who is happy and confident in herself and accessorized. You know, then all of a sudden, just as I said, ordinary things, very simple things can suddenly become, you know, beautiful. It is like a canvas. It's based on the person wearing them.
Yes,
you can have a wonderful diamond tiara on someone who is not very sure of herself. It doesn't look that nice, you know, and so on and so forth. And then when you take it one step further with my work on theater and stage play, I like that. I absolutely love working with thespians because thespians have no inhibitions. And if you're ever in rehearsal with actors, you'll know. Oh my goodness.
Oh, yes, you will.
You know, everything. I mean, it is such a story, what goes on behind. And it's not anything bad, it's just that that's how they get into character.
Yes.
You know? So, yeah.
That's hilarious. Now, you also make documentaries and short films, and we have a clip from a film you made about a 1950s couple.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. Let's take a look. That was so cute. It reminds me of all those, you know, silent movies from the 50s and the 20s and the flapper era.
Exactly.
I love that.
Exactly.
I don't even need to ask where your inspirations came from. Very evident.
Thank you so much. There's one of the things that is always interesting to do is to bring the context into your own environment, wherein people can actually see, you know, stuff, everything there is literally, okay, it's either designed by a Nigerian or styled by a Nigerian. You know, the sets are in Lagos or, you know, places in Nigeria you can point to and say, oh yeah, that's where we did that, that's where we did that. You know, the railway station in Ebute-Metta, for example.
Yeah.
You know, it's a railway station. You can have so much fun there. And, you know, kudos to Lagos State. You're starting to open up. You know, you can actually go to the Parks and Recreation's office and request for permission to shoot in public spaces.
Wow.
And that was I mean, it was not like that before.
Yeah.
It was really difficult. Then you tend to have to decide, like, oh, I'm going to shoot something outside, and then you drop your expensive camera. You take your knockabout camera.
And hope they don't steal it from you.
You hope for stuff like that. Now you get out, and it's like, one year photo and bang, and everything. And it's really nice, until we really, really get to that point where the aesthetic is everywhere. That is, it doesn't matter your station in life. Beauty is a general thing. It doesn't have a denominator of like, oh, okay, you are a billionaire or you are a pauper. If everybody has just a small inkling to appreciate beauty, the whole society
will be elevated. Now, speaking of society being elevated, you were recognized by the United Nations for a Save Our Treasure award.
Yes.
Walk me through the feelings that you got when you were announced as the winner. That was amazing.
Well, it was years ago now, but it was something I will never forget, because this was way before social media, so things were done organically. I walked in somewhere and it was in the newspaper. It was I can't remember what newspaper it was, but someone now said, "Hey, haven't you seen it? Haven't you seen it?" I was like, "What? You won!" And I was like, "Oh, okay," And then you're starting to run around in the late afternoon, trying to catch a vendor somewhere so you can get your own copy. But it was nice because then you just send your entry to the UNESCO office. It's still a focus of what work I've done even recently, because the piece was an idiot head, and it was basically focusing on the fact that it had been stolen. So I just recreated it, and it was stamped stolen. Just stolen.
Wow.
Stolen.
What a way to call people out.
Yeah. So I was even surprised. You're like, oh, okay, yeah. Okay.
And they gave you an award for calling people out. That's brilliant. Well done, UNESCO.
But it was 96.
What was the feeling like, though, for you? The moment you realized that you had won this Save Our Treasure award, how did you feel?
Well, happy. Because at that time, I wasn't actually becoming an artist. I was in the thick of medical school.
Wow.
And
so to be recognized at a point in time where you weren't even taking it that seriously.
Exactly.
That must have been magnificent.
Yeah. And as with all young people, you're going through, this was a period where there was a strike. There was always one strike or the other. So you have to find something to do in the time you're at home.
Of course.
And for me, it was easy because what was I doing? I was painting. I would make art, and it was just my default. After some time, you start to look forward to, and which is the issue. It's like, okay, you kind of want the break again so you can get back to painting.
Of course. Yeah. Now, if you look at the African art scene, it's something that contributes less than 1% of the global art scene, which contributes, I think it's worth about $624 billion worldwide. Yep. So we only contribute 1% as an entire continent. Why do you think that is?
Well, you build value from within, not from without. You look at the Mona Lisa, it's everything, but it's nothing. Who is she? You don't know anything about her, technically. I mean, she is the most obscure, historical figure, but yet everybody on the planet knows her. Why? Because value was built gradually over time on that piece.
And that's something that you think we're lacking on the continent?
That is the issue.
Right. So even with the advent of places opening like the Emokpae in Cape Town, what do you think that will do for the evolution of art on the continent?
Yes. The thing about art is it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. So you have to be patient. Now, it's good that stuff like that opens in places like Cape Town, because for a long time, Africa has literally been riding on the back of foreign grants.
Yes.
If you're doing anything major in Africa, for example, it's embarrassing that it's based on the budget of a Western country. They have your French cultural centers, your Goethe institutes, your British councils are the ones putting down, laying down the trend of supporting artists, not in their country, in Africa. So until African governments, and private individuals start doing things like, the Emokpae, That's beautiful, you know.
But I think the Zeitz Milka it was funded by a private individual.
Exactly.
Zeitz, the owner of Puma.
Exactly.
But then also partially funded by the V&A Waterfront. So the South African government had nothing to do with it.
Technically, they did have nothing to do with it. But, you know, in the end, when you build it, they will come.
True.
So you can't now ignore something that becomes a part of the tourist aspect of Cape Town, the actual base economy. Because for a long time, it's like when the country based its financial ratings primarily based on things like Nollywood. Nollywood had been there for decades, and yet, boom, it took you this long to realize that, oh, you can boost your income as a country if you actually acknowledge the work that's being done there.
Absolutely.
So we're not building the value, we're not striving to build the value. And that's all.
Isaac, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show this morning. For those of my viewers that want to keep in touch with you, purchase some of your artwork, how can they get a hold of you via social media?
Good. My social media handle is Isaac Emokpae, at Isaac Emokpae. So if you need to see or purchase any of my work, you can go to my parent gallery, Relay. So it's at Relay, that's re.le on Instagram. The Relay Gallery takes care of all of that.
Amazing stuff. Thank you very much, Isaac. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you visually.
Oh, all right then. Okay, wonderful. Now that brings us to the end of the morning show today. Thanks once again to my wonderful guest, Isaac Emokpae, for joining me, Katura King. And of course, thanks to you at home for watching. From my entire team and I here in Lagos, all that's left for me to say is enjoy the rest of your morning and, of course, the rest of your day. Goodbye.